Sometimes blowouts are fun. And on this occasion, it was a fun blowout. And suddenly people are a little bit sick of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Nobody likes winners.
Patrick Mahomes, though, I look at Andy Reid, they're the best of the best.
There is absolutely zero chance that Bill Belichick takes the Dallas Cowboys job. In this situation, we need to run the ball.
That's what's so crazy. To double down on your point.
Being smart.
Most of them do.
They do have that
They
guy
have that.
or
There is a
girl.
guy.
Listen to them then.
But that Nick Sirianni is the most overconfident coach in the NFL. Just run the bleeping ball, man.
Hi guys, welcome to talkSPORT's The NFL Rundown, our weekly show where we look back at the biggest and hottest stories from the weekend's action and look forward to what's going to be hitting the headlines over the coming week. Alongside me today, senior NFL columnist Brian T.Smith and NFL analyst, former NFL coach Phoebe Schecter is here as well. A wild week 2, guys.
Let's go. Let's go. Speaking of Tom Brady, let's go.
As I say, you're sounding a little bit Tom Brady-esque, and coming up in the show today, we will be hearing from the greatest of all time. He spoke to talkSPORT yesterday at the Birmingham-Wrexham game, so we'll have that for you, and we'll discuss that ownership, the NFL players coming over here and getting involved, like J.J. Watt at Burnley, like Tom Brady, trying to ape what's happening at Wrexham. We're going to talk about the Chiefs. Are they the new evil empire of the NFL? Has everyone started to hate on a team that was formerly so loved? And we're going to do some positivity. I felt like the first show, week 1 is a bit of a liar, and we kind of went into it and we went quite hard on things. We're going to talk about the things we love from the NFL this week, as well as look forward to our favourite games from week 3. But we need to start with the big news that came out on Monday night, that the former Alabama quarterback, the number 1 overall pick of the Carolina Panthers, supposedly, his first season there, which went dreadfully, was a blip. They brought in a new head coach in Dave Canales into Carolina. He was going to fix all their problems. He'd fixed Baker Mayfield the year before. 2 games into the season, Bryce Young is benched. Phoebe, just tell me from a football perspective, what did you see this weekend that made you think, yeah, maybe that's the right call?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few things. And I mean, ultimately, he's just not seeing the field. I mean, if you watch him, he's just in straight panic mode most of the time, missing throws. I mean, he's unable to even get his footwork straight, and that's half the battle to getting the ball out. So I think this has been something that's been coming for a long time now. It was just interesting to hear that head coach Dave Canales was saying only 24 hours previous, he's definitely starting week 3. And then 24 hours later, he's definitely not starting week 3.
And they invested a huge amount to get this guy, right? 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. DJ Moore, who is basically a first-round pick in himself in terms of the quality of the wide receiver they sent to the Bears as well, who's looked great in their offense over the last 18 months. To invest that much and to make the decision to move on so quickly, what's behind that? This doesn't just feel like it's a simple football decision, Brian.
I'm hearing a lot of good things. Everything that you both said was 100% right. There's one name that's missing, though, and it's the name that always matters in these situations. It is the owner. It is David Tepper. David Tepper has completely screwed this up. If you want to blame somebody, it's not your head coach who you just hired who's had 2 games. It's not Bryce Young, who was put into this situation and didn't have a great team around him last year. You cannot bench him after 2 games if he is your franchise quarterback. So that is a failure by the organization, not Bryce Young. In the end, though, that is on the owner. He pushed this. He forced this. He wanted Bryce Young. This was an organizational miss, and then you compare it to what the Texans were able to do with C.J. Stroud, and it looks even worse because the Carolina Panthers trade everything, take Bryce Young at number 1. The Texans get it 100% right with C.J. Stroud at number 2, and that makes it look even worse. But it's not on Young, and it's not on your head coach. It is on your owner, who has absolutely failed as an owner.
But I think you're spot on, because when they were going to the draft, the owner and the head coach were not on the same page, and you cannot be investing that much.
Frank Reich. I mean, because this has nothing to do with Canales.
No.
This goes back to Frank Reich.
Absolutely.
Frank Reich lost his job because Bryce Young wasn't developing. No, that's because your head coach and your owner were not on the same page.
Exactly. He didn't want to take Bryce Young, and so when you're in that position, you can't be bringing on somebody that you don't believe in, especially at your first round. So it ultimately does all come back to Dave Tepper, and I think that bringing Canales in there was great. You know, like you said, he helped Baker Mayfield, he's helped Russell Wilson before that. but there's only so much that you can do. And I think ultimately he just needs to sit. It's like Simone Biles, the gymnast, and she calls it the spins, isn't it?
The twisties.
The twisties. That's what he's experiencing right now, the football twisties.
I'm not sure he is experiencing the football twisties. I think he is not built to exist in the NFL. And from the perspective of, look, this is a guy who is 5'10", playing behind an offensive line where the shortest of guys is 6'3", many of them 6'7". Guys who are 7, 8, 9 inches taller than him. That makes it very difficult to see over the middle of the field. Whenever you see a short quarterback come into the NFL, any guy under 6 foot, they always cite Drew Brees and they always cite Russell Wilson. Right? Drew Brees, for me, is the exception that proves the rule. He is the guy who is the one in the million. He is the guy who, he also had a Hall of Fame level head coach who is an offensive genius there as well. So he is the guy who, yes, great, he could do it. Russell Wilson goes into Seattle, has the best running game we've seen in the last 10 years, one of the best defenses we've seen in the last 10 years, a really good offensive line. And guess what happened to Russell Wilson once he lost all those pieces? He wasn't very good anymore. Russell Wilson is at this point tanking a Hall of Fame career. He is no longer going to Canton as things stand. And that is because actually, once he decided, I want to play in the pocket, I don't want to scramble anymore, I don't want to do those things that made me special, he's not special anymore. And I think with Bryce Young, he has gone into a much, much more difficult situation than Russell Wilson ever did. And he's a guy who, unless you put him in the perfect situation, he's going to struggle to succeed with his size and his height.
Russell Wilson was pretty darn good for a while, though. Russell Wilson wasn't just good because he had a good defense and he had a good running game. He had Pete Carroll as his coach. Russell Wilson was a really good quarterback. I would say, look at Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray isn't the tallest guy in the world. We're going to get to him in a bit. He just had a perfect passer rating. But I think your overall point is right. Bryce Young was a total question mark coming out. But the interesting part is that the Houston Texans would have taken Bryce Young if they had lucked into the number 1 overall pick. But the questions are always there about his height. You heard that when he was dominating in college. Would he be tall enough? And Will, I think you were 100% right. He has not been, I can blame the owner. We can talk about the head coach, the system, all these things. He has not been good enough. And he has some limitations I don't know if he can overcome.
But I think, look, the height ultimately, it's not like these kids get to the NFL and all of a sudden they grow. Like, you still the same size offensive lineman, maybe some taller people, but ultimately you're still dealing with the same height of person. So that was his conversation. You know, everyone was asking him coming to the draft. And he's like, I've been playing with this my whole life. Like, I understand but the thing was, he had the IQ. He was so smart, his ability to pull a room together. We've not seen any of that. He's so lost in himself,
it doesn't look like he's just completely lost his confidence.
Exactly.
Whether it comes from the head coach, the firing of Frank Reich, all the changes, the instability, whatever it is. I look at that and we can break down the reads and pull out the all 22 and all these things. I just see a quarterback, whether he's at the podium or whether he is running the offense, he looks like he has zero confidence. And I'm sure that Dave Canales ran that tape and he saw the same exact thing.
Yeah. I still think, from a Carolina perspective, that situation for me at this point is untenable for everything you guys have said. And to give some context to Dave Tepper, this is a man who not only forced his previous head coach to draft the quarterback he didn't want. There was a question asked to Dave Canales at the podium yesterday of, did Dave Tepper have any say in this decision? And he didn't say no. He danced around it and said, I'd rather keep that conversation private. That, to me, sounds like Dave Tepper had some say in the fact that he's benching Bryce Young. And look, Dave Tepper is a guy who threw a drink at a Jaguars fan at a game. This is a billionaire who owns the team and was petty enough to throw a drink at a fan, who went into a Carolina restaurant who were making a joke about their own team on a sign outside and threatened to buy the restaurant and shut it down. This is a petty, petty man. He has got his expensive toy. We joked about this with Jerry Jones last week. He's going to run it as he wants. I think it's untenable for Dave Canales, and I think it's probably untenable for Bryce Young. The question is then, can this number 1 overall pick, who has got a lot of talent, who has done great things, Heisman winner, national championship winner in college, all those wonderful things, can he turn it around? And Phoebe, is there a situation in the NFL, somebody who might come in and throw a low-round pick at them, someone who might think to themselves, I can rebuild this man?
I mean, I definitely think that there is, and I think that, but I still, even just where he is now, right? Let's say they keep him at the Panthers. He just needs time. We heard Tom Brady talk about how it's a tragedy of how they're treating the young quarterbacks nowadays. And again, this conversation comes up time and time again because you have C.J. Stroud who goes and disproves all of this. Then you have someone like Bryce Young and even Caleb Williams to a certain element who are struggling. Trevor Lawrence was the same way, right? Until you get the right foundations around him and you get the right support around him, he is never going to get better, but he needs time. And he's not had a great offensive line. He's not had your star wideouts. He's not had any of that to help him be successful.
Is there a landing spot, Brian? The one that stands out to me, and we've talked a lot about Tua last week, we're still waiting to find out what the conversation is about his future. With Mike McDaniels, with the offensive weapons they have there, with a scheme that is designed for a grip it and rip it quarterback who can just get the ball out quickly and has a first read, that's the one place where I think if Miami throw like a 6th round pick at Carolina and they go, yeah, fine, let's just cut our losses, maybe I can still see him working in the NFL.
Yeah, my problem is, I think that's an interesting idea, but that to me would be long term. You're not going to make that change mid-season. Bryce Young has lost all of his confidence. He needs to be completely rebuilt. He needs to get away from the game and come back and go to an island somewhere and have a big think and figure it all out. He is not going to be able to be anyone's starter until the offseason. I don't see any other NFL team saying that's the guy that we're going to trade a pick for and turn everything over to him when he's been so bad. There's nothing, if you're a scout, if you're a coach, if you're a GM, that you're watching the game tape, because that's what it all comes down to. The game tape is your proof. You know that. You watch that, he's not an NFL starter right now. So he has to be completely rebuilt from the head to the toes, and that takes time.
Right, let's move on to our next topic as we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. 2-0 on the season after a 26-25 win over the Cincinnati Bengals in Arrowhead this Sunday evening. Harrison Butker hitting the game-winning field goal right at the death after a penalty call, which we're going to get into because I have some strong feelings about this. But what I've noticed around this Kansas City Chiefs team is a change of discourse recently. This is a team who had the lovable Andy Reid, who had Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback I've ever watched play the game of football. I know he's not Tom Brady, but from a physical tools perspective, I've never seen anyone better at it. They had these lovable players, this great scheme, Steve Spagnuolo. They were a little bit underdog. You know, they hadn't been to a Super Bowl since they hadn't won a Super Bowl since the 70s. Like, there was so much to like about them. And a little bit like the Patriots of the early 2000s, who were an underdog who came through and won it out of nowhere. We're now 2 or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years into this dynasty, and suddenly people are a little bit sick of the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you see it, Phoebe? Do you get why the people are seeing this as the evil empire now at this point?
Yes, nobody likes winners. that is ultimately it. We want to see it, but then when it happens, we're like, oh, no. We need somebody else in there. But it's because of what they're able to do. I mean, look at even the past couple of games, right? First game, they almost lost that one. Second game, they come in. And even then, 3 turnovers in the game, and you still managed to win it. People do not like winners, but there's a really high chance that they could actually do it. They're in a much better place at the start of this season than they were last season. With more pieces of the puzzle, you bring in Xavier Worthy, who is just opening up the offense completely for them. And people don't want to see it, ultimately. They want someone new out there, like maybe a Bills, like a Bengal, but they want to see somebody else.
But as much as that's all true, and no one likes a winner, and everyone hates a United or a Liverpool of the 80s or a 49ers, a Cowboys, people don't like the same thing. Yeah. For me, this organisation have done some things which call into question where they are. In the same way with the Patriots, in the same way they had this always must-win mentality. The big number one key for me is when I'm watching Rashee Rice make big plays for this team, when the NFL make a decision to not put this guy on the list, on the exempt list, because he has got so many federal charges coming his way over a driving incident where he was very, very lucky to not kill somebody. When this happened with Henry Ruggs, and he did kill somebody in a tragic and horrible situation, he was out of the NFL immediately, as he should have been, and he was in jail not long afterwards. They like to use this exemption list for people who are involved in things like domestic violence and things that look very bad on the league. I think by having Rashee Rice stay in that lineup, I actually think by having all of the nonsense in the background with the Taylor Swift of it all and the Travis Kelce of it all, which has never been something that bothers me, but for a lot of NFL fans, they're just a bit exhausted of it at this point. And that way that they find a way to win, but not always in a way that is enjoyable or something to get behind. I don't know, Brian. I think that they are a team who have become unlikable.
I'm going to be completely honest. I could not disagree with you more on this one. Look, I think we're also not mentioning a key name again. We're not mentioning Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift changes the entire conversation with the Kansas City Chiefs. They went for the team that had the great quarterback, and everyone liked Kelsey as a player. And then people this is a fact, NFL fans either absolutely love that Taylor Swift is around, or they absolutely hate it. And there is no in between. So the second that the most popular person on planet Earth jumped on your bandwagon because she was dating the star tight end, that changed the overall narrative, the overall conversation about the Kansas City Chiefs. I still look at Patrick Mahomes, though. I look at Andy Reid. They're the best of the best. Absolutely. I can't hate on Patrick Mahomes. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are unlikable at all. They are really, I actually think it's a testament to Andy Reid. He's more like Bill Belichick right now. He can come in and you can take out your star running back. You can take out your star wide receiver. You can change all the pieces, and he can still find a way to win. I think that NFL fans are tired of seeing Taylor Swift and the Chiefs and getting, and it's filling up their newsline, and it's Travis Kelce, and what are they wearing? They're tired of that. I think that any NFL fan out there respects, and how can you not respect Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback?
So I do, obviously. I love Patrick Mahomes. I love the Chiefs. There is always this thing with teams that are getting everything go their way and managing to find a way to win, where people will start to point to every little decision. And we've not really talked much football in this conversation. It's all been a bit of fun and a bit of kind of looking at all the outside factors. But actually in the game itself, they are outplayed by the Bengals for 99% of that game. Cincinnati should win that game of football. We have a situation where there is a fumble on the field from Joe Burrow, which, despite the fact that we have 8K cameras and Spider Cam and like every piece of technology available to us, I've still not seen an angle which convinced me either way whether that was the right call or not. And the referees on the field take a complete and utter age to make the decision. They don't actually call it. It was just an utter mess, which in a national game is embarrassing. But even more so for me, and this isn't necessarily a Chiefs thing, this is probably more just a personal issue and a bugbear. I hated the call at the end of the game. The call that basically killed this game off, that put Harrison Butker, who, by the way, is another reason this team is unlikable after his feelings on women, but put Harrison Butker in a game to go and win, a position to go and win this game, because they get the pass interference call on Cincinnati rookie safety Dejon Anthony. He goes up for a challenge with the aforementioned Rashee Rice. And this is just more of an issue I have with football in general. Flip that play around. Make Dejon Anthony the guy who is backing into position, who is going back towards the ball, who's not looking over his shoulder, and make Rashee Rice the guy who's coming over the top to win it. If he makes the catch, do you know what everyone is saying? Oh my God, unbelievable play. The rule book literally states, and I'm going to quote this, and this is nerdy, but I am going to quote it. When the ball is in the air, eligible offensive and defensive receivers have the same right to the path of the ball and are subject to the same restrictions. That play should never have been a flag. The Chiefs should have lost this game, and the Bengals should be calling it Burrowhead again, not Arrowhead.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, right? They both have equal right to the ball. The problem they're going to say is that Anthony jumped basically a little bit too soon. So was coming through the back of the player when he batted
when the ball arrives at the catch point, he's at the catch point because he has jumped to make it. Rashee Rice has backed into him. It's not to keep labouring the Premier League comparisons, it's Harry Kane winning free kicks on the edge of the box by not actually going for the ball, but by just nudging into a defender. And that's exactly what he's doing. I don't think that Anthony has done anything wrong in that situation.
When I saw it, I felt like he had done something wrong. I felt like, look, they've taken a shot at a rookie guy. They know that they're going to be able to kind of challenge him a little bit.
It's a smart play.
I thought it was a smart play.
And then the game didn't. It'd be different if we're talking about a touchdown situation. Did your feet get in? The game did not come down to that. I agree with you, Will. Cincinnati had that game. They should have won that game. I would actually say if I have a bigger problem, it's about your superstar wide receiver, Jamar Chase, who's getting into it with the refs, who's Joe Burrow, your gazillion-dollar quarterback, is having to pull him away. They're fighting on the field. That showed to me that if it takes everything to beat the Chiefs, you have to have your A game. You have to be on it. Cincinnati, they dropped the ball. They should have won that game, but you have your quarterback fighting with your wide receiver who hasn't been paid. That, to me, looks like you're not in sync. You have to finish. Cincinnati did not finish. I'm not blaming the refs for that one. I'm blaming Cincinnati and giving praise to a Chiefs team that keeps finding a way to win. I'd have no problem with that.
And I think they just the Bengals have a way of being ill-disciplined. If we remember last year or the year before, I think it was, when they pushed Mahomes out of bounds late, got the penalty on that.
I think it's the ghost of Marvin Lewis is still haunting them. The Bengals have been struggling to finish and had discipline problems for 2 decades now.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I like the Jamar Chase thing, right? He's obviously very frustrated, which you understand with the contract situations going on, but you've got to be able to, and also the fact that he was double-teamed an entire game, right? For a player like that who really, he brings juice to the team when he's successful. Just because you have star athletes doesn't mean they're always going to be the ones that are able to get everyone hyped up. They normally are getting everyone hyped up because they're doing well and that brings the team with them. So I think there was just so much frustration boiling over in that point that, I think there were so many more little issues like that rather than that one moment with Anthony.
You just don't like the Chiefs. Let's just put it out there.
It's pretty clear
you
now.
are a Chiefs hater.
That might be true. Look, let's get positive then. Let's
do it.
Let's
get positive.
do that because again, I feel like we've been a little bit ranting, a little bit negative. Let's go on things we loved in the NFL this week. Brian, let's come to you first.
Kyler Murray. Like we want to talk about small quarterbacks, quarterbacks that aren't worth their contracts, people that don't deliver. One number stands out, 158.3. That was his passer rating. That sounds like an odd number. That is a perfect passer rating. You rarely ever see that in the NFL. Kyler Murray has a major injury. There are question marks about his future. Should they draft somebody? Marvin Harrison looks bad. Everything I love about the NFL was in the Arizona Cardinals win in week 2, where you had your quarterback perform like he's supposed to. You had your rookie wide receiver, who was absolutely fantastic. Looks like Jamar Chase is maybe fading out a little because he doesn't get his contract. Marvin Harrison Jr. steps up. He looked like the number 1 pick, not Caleb Williams. So that is what I love about the NFL, that you have Kyler Murray, who is doubted, and you're reminded again, this is why he won a Heisman Trophy. This is why he was a number 1 overall pick. This is why Cliff Kingsbury, when he was still a head coach, said that I would love to have Kyler Murray when he had all these Bryce Young type hype questions. Kyler Murray was absolutely perfect in that game, and it's always nice to see somebody that, for all the doubts and all the questions, Kyler Murray for one week answered everything.
I thought Marvin Harrison, by the way, I think there's such an expectation on rookies coming into the league, right? And we can talk about this with Bryce Young and his confidence as well. But, these guys, we're meant to have the best wide receiver class, maybe of all time. There are 3 guys going in the top 10 who we think all of them are going to the Hall of Fame before they've even taken a snap in the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr. has the genes. His dad is one of the greatest possession receivers to ever play football. And yet in week 1, he looked a little bit lost and found it a little bit difficult. And the scheme didn't come together for him. This week, I thought they really simplified it. They just said, go out there and be you. Loads of go routes, lots of speed, lots of opportunity. And he just made plays and looked like a baller. I loved it. Yeah,
I think it was great to see. There is that big transition from college to the NFL. And it doesn't matter what you do in training camp. None of that relates to what it's really like when it's week 1 and onward. So it was great to see the 2 of them coming together because Kyler Murray's needed that for so long now, just having that guy that he can rely on. And so, it was exciting. I loved it.
So, Phoebe, you loved that, but what else did you love from the NFL this week?
Perfect. I was going to go on with that. What I also loved, talking about kind of younger teams and things like that, was Green Bay. I loved seeing Malik Willis taking over, the way that LaFleur called that game. It was beautiful, right? In the sense that, you've lost Jordan Love, but it just goes to show, one, what LaFleur's like as a play caller, head coach, how he's able to just simplify the game, similar to with Murray. Just simplify it, make it so, hey, you came in 3 weeks ago, but what are the things you're good at? What are things that you like that fit in with our system that we can help you to be successful? So it wasn't perfect, but for them to be able to run the ball as efficiently as they did, just seeing sustained drives, 11-play drives, that's what you want to see from a team like that. It makes me feel like they're very dangerous. And total side note, not related whatsoever. I don't know if you guys saw the clip about he asked Malik Willis why he didn't throw the ball on that one play because the center.
It's on talkSPORT.com. We have that. We've already done a story on that.
Oh, that killed me. I'd be like, if anyone threw me a ball and it had
covered in vomit. I mean, that is amazing.
And look, we've got some more fun, post press conference stuff coming up shortly. My only question on this, to skew back towards the negativity, is you knew Malik Willis was playing this week, right? Who around this table didn't know that Green Bay's game plan was going to be run the damn ball? Right?
Yeah, there's a flip. That was a great point.
How did Gus Bradley and Shane Steichen not figure that out?
Yeah, like I had that. I don't bet, but I had that. Like I'm betting £1 million that Green Bay's losing that game because you have a quarterback who's not very good, who can't really pass the ball.
In the first half, he threw the ball 5 times and they ran the ball 34 times. Josh Jacobs had 128 yards at half-time. What are the Colts doing? Not just going, let's put 10 in the box,
Matador.
stop the run, just letting them through.
And we're not going negative yet, but man, Anthony Richardson, like, serious. He can bomb it, but some serious questions for me about him running that offense and really being an elite pro-level quarterback right now. He's got a ton to figure out very quickly.
Yeah, I'm just looking at him as a complete rookie this year. I mean, he missed too many games last year for me to even consider his kind of repertoire. So I'm looking at him this year like you are looking at, your Caleb Williams. You are starting fresh. Everything's new. Let's build from here.
For my thing I love in the NFL this week, and I've got to give a little honourable mention, a shout out to my boy Baker Mayfield, because what a first 2 weeks he's had. He's proved he can't do it without Dave Canales. Absolutely love it. We can't not talk about the New Orleans Saints going into Dallas, because whilst I'm watching my team get absolutely stomped on at a watch party with 700 other people.
Who was your team?
I'm a 49ers fan, and you know that.
That's right, the 49ers.
They had a big watch party in London. Frank Gore was there. It was like a wonderful occasion. Great content on the channel, by the way.
Check
it out right now.
Signature.
Yeah, it was a wonderful evening. And for the 5th time in a row when the 49ers do a watch party here, they lost the game of football. But that little bit of joy that I got from not only watching the Dallas Cowboys collapse like a flan in a cupboard, but at the same time have the New Orleans Saints. We all came into the season saying, who's coach, who is the hottest of hottest behinds in terms of going this season, may even go in season. Dennis Allen had 8 weeks at most.
Yep.
And yet they've had 2 of the most impressive performances of the season so far. Gary Kubiak's come in and turned that offense into a juggernaut with Derek Carr, who's never really managed to do stay consistently good in the NFL, with Alvin Kamara and Marcus, and these guys who are falling apart at the seams, with an offensive line which, yes, they've invested in, but last season looked hodgepodge. And suddenly they're putting 44 points up on the road, scoring touchdowns left, right, and centre. Rashid Shaheed being hit for 70 yarders on the first play of a drive. It was just joyful.
Greatest show on turf. They are the greatest show on turf.
Sometimes blowouts are fun. And on this occasion, it was a fun blowout that had me whooping.
And they also beat up on the Dallas Cowboys. Anytime you can blow out the Dallas Cowboys, it might be a win for half of football America.
Yeah, hugely embarrassing them like that. I mean, Kamara was phenomenal. I mean, I've not seen him play like that in a while.
And I've always had a soft spot for Derek Carr. I actually think Derek Carr got a raw deal with the Raiders, with Vegas. He was always in a spot where it wasn't going to be enough. Derek Carr was, second-round pick. Yeah. Had to deal with his brother's shadow, David, number 1 overall pick from the Texans 2002. Derek Carr, you start pulling his numbers. Will's totally right. Never been great. Not going to be in the Hall of Fame, but very, very good. And I think it's a reminder for so many NFL teams that they go young, or they immediately promote the rookie quarterback that they just drafted, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, who really aren't ready. You need a bridge sometimes. You need somebody who can get there. You need somebody who can put up 44 points or get you 10 wins and lead you to the playoffs and inspire your team and be a leader. That is what Derek Carr has done his entire career, and I love seeing him succeed without John Gruden. Derek Carr deserves that, even if it's just 2 games. Derek Carr deserves to be on the hottest team in the NFL right now.
And I love that you mentioned his coaching, because you do go back through his coaching history. You've got John Gruden
all over the place.
We talked a little last week about vibes head coaches. John Gruden might be the ultimate all time, but came out of the booth and was just an absolute train wreck. Josh McDaniels, who literally cannot coach a game in the NFL without Tom Brady and has been terrible every other time he's done anything. And you actually go through back through his career, and he's never had good consistency. He's never had an offensive coordinator who really believes in him. Gary Kubiak is doing it for the Saints. I absolutely
I love the positivity.
I know. Look, I like
fun.
this energy for us, guys.
100% positivity.
Right, let's turn our attention to... we're not going to get negative. This is a fascinating topic of conversation, right? A little bit last week, we talked about Tom Brady, week 1 in the booth, not a great performance. Actually, before we get into it, week 2, much improved. not brilliant, but much improved.
Tip of the cap to a solid Tom Brady, who obviously listened and watched talkSPORT End Zone and read my tweets at wherever I'm at on Twitter, whatever my handle is. BT Smith UK, I think it is now. Tom Brady was much improved in week 2. And you pointed this out last week because I was reacting to the immediate. He's getting $375 million. He has to be better. It will be a slow build for him. So we could have fun with Brady and say how horrible he was and he should be benched, but tip of the cap to him, Tom Brady was a lot better in week 2.
And I just need a bit more insight. That's all I'm looking for. Still a bit vanilla at times. There was one great moment where a receiver slipped on a catch and they asked Tom Brady, would you go back to him? And the vanilla answer would be, yeah, you always trust your guys. You want to throw to him next throw if you can, build his confidence back out. And he went, no, he fell over. I'm not going back to that guy the rest of the game. He's not getting another target.
That's what I need. I need more of that from Tom Brady. I want like the true, honest helmet on.
You want his personality too. That's what makes him so special.
Which I thought he showed when he was being interviewed. Yeah. Watching Birmingham City, watching Wrexham, and talkSPORT got Tom Brady. And I was like, that's the Tom Brady I want to see. I want to see Tom Brady actually showing off because he has personality.
Yeah, he does.
Show your personality.
Well, let's see Tom Brady having a bit of fun chatting with talkSPORT this past week.
It is also probably one of the highest profile matches at this level in English football history.
That's what we should be here for.
So you've got the Eli Manning putting on a Wrexham shirt.
Yeah, that was BS. I didn't like that one bit, but that's okay. He's been my kryptonite in some big games, but you know what? I feel like I've been a part of a lot of Monday Night Football in America, Monday Night Football in the UK. If you love football and you love competition, this is the place you want to be.
And have you already got it in mind what your response will be to him if the result goes the right way tonight?
I've been working on a few rebuttals, and he's engaged a few other of my friends as well, but we have a very healthy rivalry with Eli.
The fact is that the Brady-Eli thing, for those of us who, we talked about hating the Chiefs earlier, really got over Tom Brady and Bill Belichick early doors. Loved watching Eli beat him in those 2 Super Bowls, particularly stopping the perfect season. Every Dolphins fan obviously loved that more than anyone else. But it was great to see this build to this game. You've got the superstar owners on the other side, and Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds. Eli Manning popping on a Wrexham shirt. He's having a lot more fun now. They're doing the Manning cast. Brady getting involved as well. Like, this is where you can take that stuff and you can have some fun with it, right?
That's what it's supposed to be. These relationships, these personalities, these on and off field rivalries. That's what makes it so great. I mean, I will say, I still think that Wrexham has been doing this from an American sense from the beginning, and then everyone else is just kind of following suit with Brady and JJ Watt.
What's amazing about that, though, is like, you think about LeBron James, right? I mean, because this is such a big scope now. LeBron James was so far ahead of the curve. 2011, he invested in Liverpool, and you had John Henry, and we have the story about this at talkSPORT.com. And this has been a trend now for more than a decade. So, and part of it's international, but I mean, you have Kevin Durant, JJ Watt with Burnley, Tom Brady, Ryan Reynolds. It's always sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You have all of that going on, and I completely agree with you. I loved, though, seeing that Hollywood Bowl, seeing that covered, third-tier English football. You have Super Paul Mullins and Wrexham versus Birmingham City, who's trying to be on the rise again. And you could just tell that Tom Brady is starting to understand it. I've been over here for 16 months, and don't tell anybody, but I'm more into the Premier League than actually the NFL right now, because it's so easy to be so passionate about it. You understand very, very quickly once you go to the matches, once you're in the stadiums, once you're around the pitch, how the passion is just unrivaled. And I think that someone that's competed at such a high level, like Tom Brady, he understands that. It's also a financial thing. Like, he's seeing the money component.
And that's what I want to get onto. As much as it was fun last night, because Tom Brady getting jeered by the Wrexham fans, that's not a clip we can show due to the language involved in it. That was a lot of fun. David Beckham and Gary Neville turning up in the box as well and shaking hands and all of that stuff. Like, it was very Hollywood. But there is a kind of wider conversation about what this ownership is and what it means. And actually, let's hear again from Tom Brady talking about the ownership of Birmingham City.
I'm very excited about actually being on the sideline and watching these other players with their own ambition to go out here and succeed for themselves and their families. They want to change the trajectory of their life. They want to change the trajectory of their families' lives, of what this community is all about. And that really comes down to their performance in winning. So how can we help them achieve that? Well, I believe there's a physical, mental, emotional component to all these players that we can tap into. And we want to support them in all those areas so that when they take the pitch, they're happy, they're excited, their bodies are feeling great. I believe we have a great manager in Chris, and he's out there every day watching them perform on the training grounds, and they're doing a great job thus far. And we just want to keep continuing to play our role.
Tom Brady and Tom Wagner speaking with talkSPORT. You can watch that full interview right now on the talkSPORT End Zone YouTube page. Make sure to go subscribe, drop it a like, put some comments in there, give it the love that it deserves, because it is a great chat and it is a great interview. Yeah. But I think it's really fascinating what you were saying about JJ Watt, about LeBron James, because these are very clearly ownership models where it is about bringing some star power to bring some media attention. You know, Tom Brady owns less than 1% of Birmingham City. Lewis Hamilton owns even less of the Denver Broncos, and yet they make a big headline out of that. JJ Watt and his investment in Burnley, and he's very good at presenting himself, JJ Watt, as somebody who is engaged and knows what he's talking about. I thought it was fascinating last night to see him tweeting about this game, which I think we'll get onto as well. But there is a little bit of it in me, if I'm being cynical, if I'm being skeptical.
If you're being English.
If I'm being English about it, exactly. If I'm being English about
English.
this, and I will be English about this, is that McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds have done this completely the right way. They've thrown their own money behind it. They've invested in it. It clearly is a business opportunity. They got a Netflix deal off it, or a Disney Plus deal, or whatever it was. You know, they have this investment which is paying off for them, but they so clearly care. And they've been in the community, and they've been around the club, and they've got to know the people. And that side of it feels so genuine to me. And as much as it's a great interview with Brady, I do watch Brady on TV, and I do watch JJ Watt on TV, and I do hear from Lewis Hamilton talking about how he's always loved the Denver Broncos. And there's a bit of me that rolls my eyes and goes, yeah, all right, we can all see what's happening here, and yet we go and cover it nonetheless.
Well, I think it's the right thing to do. And just to kind of caveat for JJ Watt, like his wife is an ex-pro player, Kelia Watt. I mean, she's amazing at soccer, football. So I think there's a little tie in there anyways. But I do think that we're ultimately in a time where collaboration is key, right? So you're bringing multiple sports to the table. And I think that's what people want to see more of. They want to be able to take your football fans, mix them with American football or F1 or whatever that looks like, because you're ultimately trying to grow the sports, all of those, whichever ones you're involved with. So if we can share that kind of fandom and excitement, I mean, goodness, could you imagine if you had Tom Brady as your owner? You already think not even just about like what he brings from like a fandom perspective, but what he brings from a talent and expertise. You know, he was talking about the athletes then. Like, he could teach these people so much. We say it all the time with like Christian Wades who go and play in the NFL and then come back, or your Louis Zammets. Like, they're going to give so much back to that sport.
I totally agree with that, except for how hands-on is Brady going to be. I mean, Brady can't get out there on the pitch and teach Birmingham City really anything.
And listen, this is at a time where we have things going on in the Premier League. We have looking at doing splinter leagues and super leagues. And there is a lot of ire aimed at the American owners of teams like Liverpool, of Chelsea, particularly Todd Boehly, the Glazers, John Henry. These all get a lot of ire from fans. What this sometimes feels like to me is you've got a guy who is a hedge fund manager who is worth a lot of money in Tom Wagner, who is also in that interview and said some very interesting things. But it's like, I'm the evil face of the corporation, which the fans don't like. So please allow me to put this absolutely perfectly media trained, says all the right things, big name, lots of followers on all the different social medias, and he'll make it look okay that I'm here just buying up English football clubs.
I think part of it though is it's it is such an international sports world anymore. And a lot of this is post-Corona, right? Which we really don't talk about enough. So during Corona, everything shut down on both sides across the pond. I was in America at the time, and Formula One became so big over there via Drive to Survive. Well, Premier League had been big in America for the last 10 years or so, but it became bigger and bigger. And it's not a coincidence. You have seen Tom Brady and JJ Watt follow this. I believe that JJ Watt is 100,000% sincere about Burnley. I think you're going to get in a lot of trouble, Will, by doubting JJ Watt's sincerity with Burnley. But back to Ryan Reynolds though and Rob, they have done it right. Because you see this through the documentary, and it's a self-promoting documentary, and it's a documentary that builds their brand and helps Deadpool and Marvel and all these things. But in the end, they always return it to Wrexham. They always return it to the fans. They return it to a town that was down and is trying to rise back up. And then it's tied to promotion. And that's the other great thing about this is if Watt had to deal with the Burnley dropping down last year, Brady's trying to get Birmingham City back up. Wrexham is in the 3rd tier, but could get up to the 2nd tier. And the change that is affected once you are promoted, the devastation once you are relegated, you're seeing that all play out. But it has to come back to the community. It has to come back to the fans. And I think that's what Brady and some of these other guys still have to learn is you have to get your feet in the dirt and actually feel it. You can't just show up once every 6 months.
You are obviously a guy who covered the game in Houston and will have had a relationship with the Texans and know J.J. Watt. And look, J.J. Watt has done a lot of fantastic things over his career, not only as a player, one of the most dominant defensive players of the last 30 years in the NFL, but, when the area is going through a natural disaster, the amount of money that he raised and the amount he put into the community, absolutely sensational. But he is also an individual who has had a very carefully couturied public image for the entire of his career. And whether that is things like, we have this game last night and people talk about should they play this game in America to really ramp up that attention. And I'm just going to read you the tweet he put out yesterday. The beauty of the English game is the history, the tradition, the passion. These clubs have been around long before any of us arrived and they'll be around long after any of us are gone. Modernise some aspects. You're going to need that for sure, but let's not mess with what makes it great. Those are wonderful words that sound to me like they're written by somebody else. And he's a guy who, when people on an NFL Network podcast slag off his clothing line, they hear from his agent and from his lawyers. He is a guy who has always had just that little bit of care. And for me, if you know those depths, it's what plays into this idea that the players a little bit are puppets for these billionaires to get to make themselves look good in the popular sphere.
But that's their, and when you're a professional athlete or you're in those roles, you almost have to have those two separate lives, right? So you have to, what the right thing to say and what the right thing to do is. And so if by him putting out that tweet, I think he's doing and saying the right things and he's trying to represent his people, essentially the people of Burnley, the people of the UK who love and appreciate the sport here. But it's not to say that he can't have separate ideas, but I think he, as a professional, has grown to learn that I've got this life and this is what I present, and then I've got this side of things, which is maybe a bit more personal to me, but you can't be faking it the whole time, right? So you need to be able to have that separation, essentially, to be able to be yourself a little bit, because most of your life is out there already.
Yeah, and why can't time will tell, right? If they're in it for the long haul, if they're still involved in 10 years, if Birmingham stay in League One and Brady's still turning up, if Burnley don't get back to the Premier League and J.J. Watt is still getting behind them, that's going to be a big testament, right?
Yeah, but why can't it be? It's complex. Why do we have to simplify it? Right? Why does it have to be you're either this or you're that? J.J. Watt is somebody I covered him for most of his career. I feel from a professional level, I've dealt with J.J. Watt a lot. J.J. Watt was always ahead of the curve in self-branding and self-promotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. If we're going to praise pop stars and entertainers and Ryan Reynolds for that, but we're going to slag off an NFL star, that doesn't make any sense. What would be worse? It would be worse to me if J.J. Watt just bought a steak, never showed up, didn't understand Burnley, had no connection to the community. I think he's doing the best he can in that situation. It's not going to be perfect. Those words sound sincere to me. Yeah, maybe they're a little PR crafted, but I thought that was a very accurate statement by him. And I think he's done the best he can in that situation to where he's always tried to represent Burnley, but still he's about J.J. Watt, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's also, I think this never gets talked about enough. Ryan Reynolds, Tom Brady, all these people, they have opened up that name, that brand on an international scale. And I think that's my bigger point. That's where this is all going, is that all these international stars, whether it's Lewis Hamilton, whether it's Tom Brady, they want to be international right now. They want to be global. That is where this is all gone. There's no better way to do that than be a part of English football.
Yeah.
Right, let's start to look forward to week 3 in the NFL, because there's a couple of really key matchups that we absolutely love on paper, and for very, very different reasons, I think, because one involves two of the hottest teams in the NFL at the right moment, going head-to-head with each other, and looks like an absolute barnstormer. The one before that, less so. The Dallas Cowboys heading to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens losing what had to be, for me, despite the result being very tight, the upset of the week to the Las Vegas Raiders at home in M&T Bank Stadium against the Cowboys team who, let's be honest, they put a whooping on a terrible Browns team in week 1, fine. But really were shown up by the Saints this week and now have huge question marks to answer. And suddenly, this game takes on what already looked like a game between two playoff teams, a lot of significance, Phoebe.
Oh, hugely. I mean, look, the Cowboys just lost to a team where you don't even have a running quarterback, first off. Now you're going to come in and you're going to play the Ravens, who have Lamar Jackson. They've got Derrick Henry. They can run all over you. And for the Cowboys, one, they can't run the ball themselves. And two, they can't stop the run. So now you're going against a team who literally is going to, their strengths are your weaknesses. And I am very concerned for this Cowboys matchup.
My biggest disappointment thus far of the NFL season is the Baltimore Ravens. And and Lamar Jackson. I love everything about Lamar Jackson from an athletic standpoint, right? Like he is your modern quarterback. I think of Randall Cunningham, right? And he was so far ahead of the curve. The good things about Michael Vick. The next stage of that is Lamar Jackson. Like the pinnacle of that is Lamar Jackson. He's improved as a passer. They've improved that offense. He's still an incredible runner. And he's 0-2, and he's not finishing, and he's having the same problems again. So there's no better way to fix it than against the Dallas Cowboys. And what a story that will be in the NFL. Like, we want to be 100% positive, but let's be 100% negative for a second. What a story that will be if the Dallas Cowboys, if you finally pay Dak, you've got the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Most people, including me, don't think he's worth it, as we said on this show last week. And they start 1-2, and they are an absolute mess. And Will, at some point, we maybe go there, but what in the world do you start doing with Mike McCarthy? Like, I would have fired Mike McCarthy 2 years ago. I'd have fired him after last season. The Dallas Cowboys have to win this game because they cannot afford to start 1-2. And they probably should be 1-2 after this game.
They are a prime example. There are some teams in the NFL who manage to exist in this sphere. And funnily enough, the Saints who beat them this week somehow have managed to push this cap hell down the lane and just get away with it for years. They are one of these examples of a top-heavy NFL team who it's really coming home to roost. Yeah. I think the Eagles are a fascinating example of this as well, but what they did very intelligently is that Jalen Hurts contract is worth $9 million against the cap last year, 13. Like in 2 years' time, it's still only going to be 31 million against the cap, at which point Dak Prescott is going to be paid twice of that and all of it hitting the cap. It's a horrendous contract. They are, like the Cowboys seem to have been the whole time under Jerry Jones, we're going to pay our own guys, we're going to pay our stars, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons has his coming as well.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be paying 80+% of the cap to 3 guys. And what you're now seeing is that team who could have been a playoff team, could have been a Super Bowl team for the last 3 or 4 years, that 53 is getting weaker and weaker, and the coaching is getting weaker and weaker with it as well. I don't know. I think the Ravens are going to take them apart this weekend.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like, the Cowboys situation is not sustainable. I'm kind of, not to bring it back to Brady, but when Brady went to Tampa Bay, he took a pay cut because he understood that he needed other great players around him. And the problem the Cowboys have always had at being America's team is that the stars, the lights shine on them, and it's a big show, and it's Jerry World. It's always about the kind of what it looks like, but there's never been the true substance. They never make it through to the playoffs.
Substance, that's a great word. Like, they always lack substance.
Yeah.
It's all show, it's glamour, it's lights. Jerry Jones seems to he lacks substance, and I don't know when do you figure that out? When you get the right head coach, when you bring in the guy. I mean, who do they hire? Like, let's have a fun hypothetical. Let's say McCarthy is pushed out. Who comes in and fixes that organization? One name comes to mind for me, and he's all over TV right now, and he's known as kind of being a hard-nosed coach.
There is absolutely zero chance that Bill Belichick takes the Dallas Cowboys job, because as we saw this past offseason, when the Atlanta Falcons had real interest in Bill Belichick, it was too much control. They already had a GM in place who they loved. In Terry Fontenot, they knew what they wanted, and he wanted everything. You think Jerry Jones, because he's... And maybe there's this bit of Jerry Jones. Maybe as an octogenarian pushing into his 90s who knows he's not got long left in this world, wants more than anything else is one more ring. Maybe he goes, do you know what? Put the ego aside, give Belichick the job. I just can't see it at all. I think Sean Payton is potentially a shout if the Bo Nix Denver thing doesn't happen.
But is Sean Payton, is he still a good NFL coach? I question that more than ever. He's made so many. It's an interesting name, and you have the connection, and that was his dream job forever. He's made so many mistakes already in Denver. Bo Nix looks horrible. Didn't work out with Russell Wilson. I haven't gotten back from Sean Payton when he had that comment that the last Nathaniel Hackett, that he had screwed up Russell Wilson, and it had all going so bad. And Sean Payton, to me, looks horrible since those comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always should never be putting out stuff like that, especially when you're trying to get a job in the NFL as a coach. But I think going back to your point with Belichick, that would never work either, because Jerry World is on show all the time. Yeah. And you're talking about a coach who is completely opposite, everything in-house, don't show anything. I think that could never work. But Sean Payton is always an interesting one. I've never seen him really with a rookie quarterback before. So I don't know if, the success I've seen him have is with more veteran quarterbacks. So I think this is all new learning curve for him as well. The Russell Wilson thing was his own kind of lifeline because he just didn't even want him in the first place and made that very clear.
You're seeing him with a rookie quarterback, Peyton, this season, and the Bonix comments after the game when he was asked about the interception, he just went, yeah, I threw it to the wrong team. We're like honesty in press conferences. Give it to me all day long. I absolutely love it. We'll get more into the Ravens, I'm sure, but I believe that they will turn around an 0-2 season. I really do think that they can still be a playoff team in the new format. Let's turn our attention to the other game we love this week, which very much on the other end of the scale. The Minnesota Vikings and that Brian Flores defense absolutely put a hurting on the 49ers this week. We're going to have an exclusive interview with Josh Metellus this week, the safety who picked off Brock Purdy. He's a fascinating character, looks brilliant in that defense right now. And they're going up against a hot Houston Texans team who are kind of doing what everyone said they wanted to see them do before the season. Like, I was thinking the Texans may be a little bit of a drop-off from last year, keeping that good feeling going. It's very difficult to be that great a defense year on year, but they have looked sensational through 2 weeks. And suddenly, this 6 p.m. game on Sunday looks like the game of the week.
It looks incredible. I'm so excited for this one. I mean, kind of just going to the Vikings first, watching them, first off, who would have thought Sam Darnold has had a rebirth the way that he has?
It's the beauty of the NFL. It really is.
Unbelievable. That throw to Justin Jefferson from the 3-yard line, the 97-yard touch, that was fantastic. But their defense, and I think that's what's so key here, the way that Brian Flores has created that defense, he's got all the exact puzzle pieces that he needs to be able to show anything. And that's probably going to be This is probably going to be the toughest challenge for C.J. Stroud because of what they can dial up. They are formation-based. They are having literal checks upon checks upon checks. So you don't even know what you're going to get when you're seeing what they're giving you because they change so many different things on you that it's going to keep C.J. Stroud guessing. And I'm interested to see what that kind of football IQ really looks like when you're going against a team like the Vikings.
Yeah, Brock Purdy, after your favorite team in the world, didn't really fully show up against Minnesota. He's walking off the field and he's praising Brian Flores' defense for being so complex. I thought that was really cool inside football where you're seeing a Mr. Relevant basically saying, man, you guys were too good today. I couldn't figure you out. There was this knock against them last season because the Vikings gave the 49ers a rough time last season. But it was when Debo was out, it was when Trent Williams was out. So it was all this, they picked on the holes. Trent Williams had his worst game as a 49er this past weekend. And that's not because he's a bad football player. That's because that Vikings defense is sensational. Yeah, and so to Phoebe's point, we've never in the NFL in recent history seen a quarterback come in and just figure it out, right? Because even Patrick Mahomes had to sit for the first year and watch Alex Smith, and he had Andy Reid, and he basically took over a playoff team. They made the playoffs year before. C.J. Stroud has gotten it all right. His efficiency is remarkable. This is the next test, right? Now, it hasn't happened in the AFC Championship, in the Super Bowl. This is the next test. You're 100% right, Phoebe. How does he respond to this really complex Brian Flores defense? And for all the issues that Brian Flores had in Miami, there's no doubt that he is a brilliant mind at running NFL defenses. I think that Texans find their answer with their running game, and it's a big question mark for this team with Joe Mixon and his health because that was a key addition for them, and they didn't have that running game against the Chicago Bears. It was more Stroud. So they have to have that balance. That was huge coming into this season. I still, though, I have not seen the Texans not be able to figure it out. And this will be a big, big test for DeMeco Ryans, for C.J. Stroud, for the balance of their offense. And I didn't think we'd be saying that about Minnesota, but that's what finding a Derek Carr-like quarterback, Sam Darnold through 2 games has been the perfect answer. We don't even talk about J.J. McCarthy anymore. Sam Darnold looks like a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Genuinely, the 2 best quarterbacks in the league this week might have been Sam Darnold and Derek Carr. What world are we living in after week 2 of the NFL? Absolutely madness. Look, let's move on to our extra point, our final points of the show. I'll come to you first, Brian. What did you want to throw into the pot that we've not managed to touch on this week?
After being so positive for most of this show, let's get realistic. And welcome to the NFL, Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how you paint your fingernails. I don't care what you do on social media or however you advertise. I do not care. It is the NFL. All that matters is that you win and that you're good. And Caleb Williams has talked a little too much thus far, and he hasn't been able to back it up. Having the comment like, "Don't worry about punting this year," basically told his punter like, "You're gonna have it really easy this year." That to me sounded like Caleb Williams at USC, who thinks he's on top of the world. And no, welcome to the NFL, kid.
Yeah.
His stats are horrible right now. He's not getting benched. He is the future in Chicago. But it has been an instant reminder of how difficult this league can be making that transition, which you talked about earlier. And we've seen it with Bryce Young. We've seen it with all the Bo Nix. We've seen it with all these young quarterbacks. Caleb Williams does not look good right now. And after 2 weeks, Marvin Harrison looks like he could have been the number one pick. You see all that talent. Caleb Williams has a long way to go, but he's not getting benched. They're not resting him. Chicago's schedule gets a little easier, but Caleb Williams has a lot to figure out very quick.
He doesn't. Only thing I want to add to that is definitely his offensive line is not helping him. He is the most sacked quarterback in the league right now. And as a young guy, that is not what you need to be thinking about the whole time. I agree, he is not the level that we expected of him, but he also is getting zero help
we say that a lot with quarterbacks, right? You have to have all the pieces in place. You have the right head coach, general manager, scheme, offensive coordinator, and offensive line. The most underrated part of an offense is the offensive line. You're 100% right, Phoebe. Caleb Williams' offensive line is not helping him out right now.
I'm going to disagree. I think Caleb Williams is exactly what we expected him to be. Because I came into the season going, Caleb Williams is going to be fun to watch.
Love it.
He's going to throw some insanely terrible picks, but he's also going to make some spectacular plays. We've just only seen the first half of that so far. I expect him to improve over this season. I think with the weapons he's got around him, I think Caleb Williams, we get to the end of the season, he comes out as a net positive. But I always thought, even though I loved him coming in, that he was going to be a project guy. People have to remember, we throw this around a lot of the time. Look at Peyton Manning's interception stats in his first ever season in the NFL. Not saying he's Peyton Manning, but I'm just saying I'd rather have a gunslinger having fun back there and making a few mistakes than just a robot who actually isn't going to progress to the next level at any point. Phoebe, what do you want to add to the mix?
I just want to add to the table the Seattle Seahawks, because Geno Smith is still somehow finding a way to get it done.
He's still the Seahawks quarterback. That's crazy.
It's incredible. I love head coach Mike Macdonald. I think he's terrific. I love when he was with Ravens. And a special shout out to Adam Dirty, our resident Brit, who is got a defense that is flying around right now with some incredible puzzle pieces. And so I just wanted everyone to know they're 2-0 right now. They're slowly creeping their way along this NFL season.
That first win was weird. That first week win was like, they got away with one there.
That's okay. A win is a win.
But who's 2-0 and who's 1-0? The Seahawks are 2-0 and the 49ers are 1-1, right?
So let's
let's
really
win the NFC West at the end of the season. Yeah. Whatever. I want to talk about a coaching problem in the NFL. And this is a just wider bugbear of mine anyway. And it's to do with the ego of head coaches in the NFL. And we've seen some horrible, horrible decisions over the past few weeks. Antonio Pierce, week 1 with the Raiders, not going for it on 4th down in plus territory where every analytics, but you didn't have to be an analytics guy. Every fan is sat at home screaming at him. You've not been able to move the ball all day. You've got to go for this. This is your only opportunity to win this game of football. And he kind of played not to lose, but when you're already down 6, is it really playing not to lose? You've seen it this week. Dan Campbell, who I have to say, was incredibly honest afterwards and came out and owned up to it, but horrible error by him at halftime with that field goal. And it with too many men on the field normally means there's 12 men on the field. I think there were 19, 20 guys on the field because half the field goal unit's out there, half the team out there to go for it is out there as well. The Eagles this week abandoning the run on Monday Night Football in the red zone when they have run it down the Falcons' throat all week long. When with the time on the clock, even if you run that 3rd down play instead of throwing it to Saquon Barkley, the clock comes down to a point where Kirk Cousins can't go and win the game. Even if you go for it on 4th down, you have a chance to go and get it with a field goal. No chance. It's written off. So why can't these guys go out and just employ a person who is their analytics and their clock management guy and just have someone on the sideline? They've got so much to focus on. It's an insanely hard job. You just need somebody saying, look, in this situation, we need to run the ball.
That's what's so crazy. To double down on your point,
being smart.
Most of them do.
They do have that
They
guy
have that.
or
There is a
girl.
guy.
Listen to them then.
But that's the problem. They don't listen. Like Nick Sirianni is the most overconfident coach in the NFL, who's on the verge of getting fired, who could have gotten fired last offseason, who keeps doing, to your point, the same things. It doesn't make any sense. You've got Jalen Hurts, you've got Saquon Barkley, you have all this talent. Just run the bleeping ball, man. And he's too overconfident for it. There's too much ego there. He's not listening to the voice in his ear.
And it's why I think, to come back to an earlier point, Bryce Young will end up on another team, because the ego of NFL head coaches is, I can fix that guy.
That's a great point.
I can fix that guy. I will turn him back into Alabama Bryce Young. It did, however, lead to me wanting to very briefly talk about my favourite moment from the whole of week 2, because a head coach who's approaching things in a very different fashion by very much being himself and being incredibly honest. If you've not seen this clip, it is astonishing. As the Titans head coach, Brian Callahan, his quarterback, Will Levis, turns over the ball in the red zone. And as you can see, you do not need to be an internationally recognised lip-reading expert to know what words he said to Will Levis as he came off the field. He turned over the ball in exactly the same fashion for the second week in a row. Now, it's his second game as a head coach. Maybe you can say, well, he's not learned. Hide your face, have that conversation privately. Don't scream it at him on the middle of the field. And yet, in his press conference afterwards, he doubled down on it.
I think the camera caught it pretty clear, if I had to guess. So, I was upset. It was dumb. It was the same exact thing he did last week, and he cost us points in the red zone. And that is what it is. He's a grown-up, and he knows better. And so, I was really irritated that he cost us 3 points in a game that we probably needed it.
I loved it. But, from a coaching perspective, Phoebe, have you ever heard a coach talk about his quarterback in a press conference like that?
Never. You would just never do it. Look, you would come in and just say, hey, it was the heat of the moment. I was a bit passionate at the time, but, we love Will Levis. We love what he's doing. He's getting better every week. Anything.
We're going to work on that. Whatever generic
Anything.
cookie cutter thing you're going to say, not that.
Not that. You don't do that, because ultimately, what message does that send to the rest of the locker room? What does that tell the rest of the players? Well, our head coach is going to just wring us out to dry when things go bad. We're only week 2 and this is happening. What happens if this is going poorly the end of the season? Which one of us, our heads are on the chopping block, and who is he going to openly be talking to about that?
One of the most simple things an NFL coach can do, and I used to always hear that when I was covering the NFL, was, the coach takes the blame.
Absolutely.
And it is generic, and fans start to hate it. And I've covered coaches who would always take the blame, and fans want accountability, and they want the players, but you cannot survive that way in the NFL. I think we're also seeing, and nobody talks about this, but this is the age of coordinators, right? So a lot of these guys are getting these jobs. They're not seasoned. They're younger. They didn't come up through the college ranks. They weren't college head coaches. That used to be how you were hired. You were going to do college, go into the pros. You're going to be an NFL coach for 30 years and bounce all over, and you understood coach speak. A lot of these guys are younger now. They didn't really pay their dues. They're smart. Yeah. They're talented. They're really good at calling an offense or a defense, but you put them with a live mic behind a podium, and they say the absolutely wrong thing. And if I'm the Tennessee Titans right now, if I'm Will Levis, I know that my head coach absolutely does not believe in me, and I am one interception away from getting benched. That's all he said.
But you're so right. It's about accountability, and the lines are, we got to coach them up better. That's the accountability.
It's supposed to be a team, right? It's supposed to be TEA, no I in team. That coach, he just made it all about himself with the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
The professional NFL journalist loved it. Hated it, sorry. The professional NFL journalist hated it. The former NFL coach hated it. The NFL nerd in the room loved it. Absolutely loved it. More honesty, more of that. I think we're going to have to put in every week a feature into the show, which is just best moments from the podium this week, because there were some fantastic ones. That is all from us this week on The Rundown. Thanks again to Phoebe and to Brian. Brilliant stuff, as always. And don't forget, if you want more of this, some brilliant interviews as well coming for you this week, then make sure you go and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, talkSPORT End Zone. We'll see you next week.